And let me get to our guest in the house. It's Judge Kent McDaniels, County Court Judge, Youth Court Division, Rankin County, staying busy, and Corey Gerber. Corey is the Youth Prosecutor, Rankin County. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Well, we hated to call you out of retirement, but Judge, we needed you. So it's any lackadaisical moments where you don't have anything to do?
Not so far, Paul, but that's the governor gave me that same spiel, and I bought it then, so what the heck.
Yeah. Well, you can just fish so many days. Come on, play golf. That's boring.
It is, and I live on a golf course, but I never play anywhere.
That's even worse. That's right. Even worse, because you got to watch people play when you can't play, so that's...
You got it, brother.
I want to, and Corey, thank you for coming in, sir. I'm going to let you guys take the lead on this one, because we've been talking about it so very, very much. And I said something earlier this morning, and you guys are faced with this on a daily basis. We've got a situation we've never seen. We've never seen 13 and 14 and maybe in the Wild West. I don't even think then. 13-year-old girl with firing, get charged with murder. 15-year-old kids, some of them out there doing it because they've got sponsors who say, "Look, you get me this car, that car, I will pay you this." It's gone crazy. So, Judge. First of all, am I overemphasizing that, or what's the status on the streets of our state and also of Rankin County?
Well, Paul, you're not overemphasizing it. I was a youth court judge from '97 when I was first appointed until Judge Broom was elected in 2002. So I have a good borderline to measure today's events against, and it's completely different. I mean, the ugliness, the weapons used, the gang kind of activity, that's not limited. I saw a special on TV last night, which had that mostly limited to things going on in Hinds County. But they're not the only ones suffering from this, and I wish I had a quick and easy three-point solution to give you, but I don't. But we're dealing with in a whole bunch of ways, which I will express to you. But the bottom line is, no, it's never been like this before.
One of the problems we're having is not addressing the problems because of DEI, sensitivity, woke, or whatever. And I'll ask Corey, and this has nothing to do with racism, but unless we face this problem, what percentage of this is black, Latino, Caucasian?
That's a difficult question, Paul, and primarily because what we deal with is in Rankin County. Mm-hmm. And, dealing in Rankin County, we see primarily it's across the board. It's not any one group of people that are doing this, and primarily the issues that we see start in the home. Whenever the parents are unwilling to or unable to take responsibility for their children, it's so easy for a parent to just pacify a child, and that's the issue that we see. And I tell everybody that I talk to, what you see is, and again, across the board, whenever you have children who are raising themselves primarily on a cell phone, and as you said, they have sponsors. They see these things on that are romanticized in social media, and they think, well, this is what I should be doing.
Is that something new too? Because you never heard of it was that organized, and I guess this has probably made its way through gangs, and with the introduction of illegals coming in, they're more sophisticated in this type of activity. It's probably going to get worse and better. But I've actually heard people say, look, we want a Lexus and this model. I've got a buyer. Can you go out and get this for me? And this is what I want to get. And they will probably get, a couple of $3,000, but more than a 15 or 16-year-old will make in a year at his age, or, maybe even older.
Yeah, that's very true, Paul. One of the things that we've seen in the past, and excuse me if I don't speak about cases directly, youth court is very confidential, but that's what we deal with. But there have been gang initiations that primarily revolve around passing bad checks for cars, stealing cars. It's seeing what a child is willing to do. Children are held to a different standard in Mississippi, and in my opinion, rightfully so. But what we see is we have adults that are using children to do things that an adult would serve serious time for, and they explain to the child, well, you'll just go to the juvenile detention center. And, again, these children are just looking for somebody to accept them, some place where they fit in, because they're not finding that at home primarily.
Well, like any drug dealer, though, are we getting to that next level? Are we getting to some of these people who are doing the sponsoring and backing these young kids?
That's a question for the adult prosecutors, but I will say yes. Primarily, what we try to do is meet with the children, and of course they are children. But what I've learned about children is they primarily are honest. If you talk to them and treat them like a person, they just want to talk back to somebody, and they'll give you the information that you're looking for. And some of these adults are being held accountable for that.
Are they local? Are they outside and widespread somewhere else, or just I'm trying to figure this out.
I understand. What I've seen personally is it's not in Rankin County itself. They are in the state though. I don't want to speak too much on that. Again, those aren't my particular cases, and where they are in the investigative stages. I don't.
All right, but have you had any cases where they've been indicted and convicted?
Again, Paul, that's not where I am. I'm with the children's side. So the adult questions, I don't handle adult cases. I don't prosecute adult cases. I'm sorry.
Judge, what do we do with these kids? After that, what do we do with them? If they're 13 years old, what happens? What's the law in the state of Mississippi?
Well, I have a pretty strong policy, as you can imagine, for just locking them up, giving them some time to think about their stupidity, and we have a great detention facility. Let me interject here, Paul. One of the problems that other counties probably have is they don't have the kind of tax base that Rankin County has. And we have, in addition to our tax base, which employs over 20 employees for youth court and 24 for our detention center, and we have a full-time Region 8 mental health specialist on the staff. It just goes on and on, but we got $5 million worth of grant money for not only youth intervention to get ahead of these problems, but for family intervention, where we try to do just what you're suggesting, and that is let's get the whole family accountable to the court. And we can do that thanks to that grant, and that's one of the main things that we've tried to do.
Judge, I hear that all the time, and I'm just asking you, how does that play out? When you say you got $5 million to intervene with the family, what does that look like to the point where, okay, this is working?
Well,
I mean, you pay them off? You have midnight basketball? You get together and you have a meal together? How's $5 million family intervention? What do you do? We hear these things, but turn it to something tangible.
If I may, Judge, Paul. So the way that looks is any family that comes into the court where there's substance use, that is a driving factor. Those parents are screened. If it's a juvenile that comes in for a delinquency act and there's drugs involved, those children are screened. If they meet certain qualifications that are in line with our grant, we enroll those people into our programs. And what those programs look like is counseling with the families, inpatient therapy for the adults, inpatient therapy for children, and all of this is paid for through these federal grants. One thing that we have seen is if we can intervene early and we get the families back on track, what we see is the rate of delinquency goes down. If a child comes into our court that's abused or neglected and there's no intervention, statistically that child will become a delinquent child. That's your 13-year-old that's going out and committing crimes, and because they have no structure at home. But we move in at that point, and it's services that are put into place. These families are.
You have any verifiable stats that say it's working?
The national.
Actual verifiable stats that you can look at and say, okay, this is we're getting our money's worth.
The national conference does this year. Paul, we have to take and we record everything that we do. Everything goes into a database and it's sent back to our grant. to our grant providers. And if we are not meeting certain statistics and certain variables, then we're ineligible for those grants. So,
Okay, we got a quick break here. I want to ask you about the truancy laws, curfews, and things such as that. I hear laughter, so you don't want to miss this one then, and that's coming up next.
Right.
We're back with County Court Judge Kit McDaniel, Youth Court Division, Rankin County, called out of retirement to handle some of the tsunami. And Corey Gerber, who's youth prosecutor. Corey, I'm just interested, how did you get into this?
That's a great question, Paul. I've been working with children my entire career. I started out as a school teacher and a baseball coach, and got challenged to go to law school, and started after graduating law school. I was a felony public defender, and I moved to Rankin County and started working in youth court with Judge Broom, and fell in love with it, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And this is what I like to do.
Every once in a while, when you see somebody come through that you've changed their lives, it makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
Every day, that's what we work for. You know, if we can change one family and make one child's life better, it's worth it.
Yeah. You know, I was going to talk about truancy and things such as that. It's got to be hard today, though, because if these kids are in school, I was thinking of the 13, 14, 15 years old. They go back to school, if they've disaffiliated themselves with a gang outside and some of them in the schools, they become, just the meat for the piranha. I mean, it's got to be more difficult now. We've taken this a step above bullying.
Well, Paul, it is. I mean, it's very, very difficult. But here's a couple of things. First of all, we don't have any control over the truancy laws, and
or curfews, for that matter.
Exactly, and so that's one of the reasons we have a family intervention court. If we have a child who's, because of drugs or irresponsible drug use by the parents, is not attending school or not getting up for school in the morning, then we can put them in that court and ride herd on them. But that's just a tip of the iceberg sort of thing. The main problem that we have with truancy is that what do you do? The schools are doing a great job of reporting it to us, but we have so few, I guess you'd say, weapons to be used.
You mean state laws?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there are good laws on the books, but it's easy to talk about what you ought to do, but the implementation, sometimes we don't get a report on somebody being truant until March or April. Well, I got news for you. Yeah, it is too late. The horse is out of the barn, and we'll not be able to do anything that year.
Speaking of that, if the horse did break out of the barn, the owners and cause an accident and bust into a storefront, then the owner has consequences. But if a kid busts out of the house, busts that same storefront, sometimes the parents are not held to responsibility on that one. And is that something we need to do? Is to increase the parents' responsibility and consequences? Well,
we can actually do that now, because we can charge restitution in a disposition of any case. We can charge restitution, and it first falls to the child to get a job or do whatever they're old enough to do to pay it back themselves. But then the parents can, under certain circumstances, can be held responsible for paying that restitution. But again, that's one of the reasons we have the Family Intervention Court, Paul. You got to address this at every level, from top to bottom. And the problem is not easily identifiable at one particular level. I didn't mention this a minute ago, Paul, or I guess Corey didn't, but we got Family Intervention Courts, which we believe they're working, and our reports indicate they're working. We caught a couple in the hospital with their child within the last couple of weeks. The child needed hospitalization. The parents decided while they were up there with the child, it'd be a good time to use some meth. Now, I'm telling you, that is a train wreck. They're just that child, who's now a couple of weeks old, just has no chance at life. And we're stupid enough to think maybe we can intervene and put a stop to that by getting the parents off drugs. And so a lot of these children are born with drugs in their system. So you got to start, and the reason I mentioned all that is we have a program called 0 to 3, which we have a grant for. And when a family comes in, and when you have a child who's in the hospital, born with drugs in their system, or whose parents are using drugs while they're in the system, in the hospital with that child, you got to start early. So we can start with children the day they're born. And
we need to. I need to talk to Will and make sure we play this interview again during the Palmer Home during the Palmer Home Radiothon, because we see that all the time. Where do these kids go? You know, they're born with a punishment and a sentence already before they even start. Corey, do you think this is reflective of what's going on in Rankin County, just about across the state?
Paul, I think if you take a look at it, I mean, Rankin County is definitely a special place. But yes, I mean, this is, having practiced across the state, this is it is a statewide issue, especially with the drug use. And as Judge said, you know, we're fortunate enough here in Rankin County to have such resources. And I'll tell you, Paul, it's justice by geography. You ask, where do these children go? And I'll tell you, in counties where family is important and it's lifted up, we try to find those families first and put those children with families. And that's not in every jurisdiction. That's how Rankin County handles it. Other children go directly into child protection custody and end up in the foster system.
Is drugs a player in this for these kids? And I'm not sure how young, 15, 16, or maybe even younger than that, but is drugs one of the gateways here that brings them on the streets to do this, or is it mostly without a solid family background, they're just gravitating toward gangs on the outside?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, both of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what you see is drugs is definitely an issue, and with I guess the popularity of the vapes, that's just a way.
That was my next question. Yeah,
just a way to introduce drugs into the system. I mean, you can use a vape to introduce methamphetamines, fentanyl, marijuana. Basically, anything you want to put into the human body can be taken in through a vape.
Are they using the gas station stuff a lot?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We wish the legislature would deal with kratom. That's one of the gateway drugs, which is, but the point is, I had a lady in there yesterday, and she said all she had done is smoke some vapes, but we test every person that comes in there, the parents, the children, everybody, for drugs. And she had a very high marijuana level, THC. She just couldn't understand that. All I've ever done is smoked a vape, and when I bought it at the service station, they swore to me it didn't have any marijuana in it. Yeah, right. You believe that? I got land.
She bought it was high. Wait a minute. She bought a vape at a gas station with a high content of THC.
Absolutely. Well, that's her story. We don't know where she actually got it, but that was her excuse for having it in her system when she had told us to start with, I don't do any drugs. Oh, really? Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've met the enemy, and it's us. Our society allows that sort of thing to continue, and I don't know what's going to fix it.
Corey Gerber is the youth prosecutor. Kent McDaniel, Judge McDaniel is my other guest here. I'm going to ask both of you guys, where the hell are you getting these guns?
Oh, my.
Because, I mean, 13 years old, 14 years old, and nobody goes outside now without a gun. It used to be a skateboard, used to be a baseball glove. Now you got to have a weapon. Where are they getting these guns?
Well, I'll let Corey answer that. He reviews these cases and tells me which ones I ought to bring into court. So explain that to him.
So the gun issue, primarily what we see, especially in the youth court world, it's they're taking them out of cars. People have the right to carry guns, and they do, and I completely support that. The problem is they're leaving guns in their cars. The children are breaking into cars. They're getting the guns, and that's where a vast majority of the juvenile gun issue is coming from. These children, they believe, based on what they've seen, that they have to protect themselves from gangs and things that you've been speaking of, Paul.
Yeah,
and everyone will tell you, I have to protect myself. But we treat guns very, very seriously, at least here in Rankin County. It's our well, at least my mindset, if you're caught with a gun, I'm going to be asking the district attorney whether or not this child should be treated as an adult.
If you're 15 years old and you have committed and shot somebody, where do you go?
So if you're 15 years old and you shoot somebody, you are under the original jurisdiction of the circuit court. You're an adult for all practical purposes. Actually, it's 13. 13 years old is the age.
So where do you go to serve your sentence?
So
hold on, I'll give you the final segment when we come back in just a moment. Right after this, hold on. Let me get back to the interview here. Corey Gerber, youth prosecutor of Rankin County, and also the good judge, county court judge. It's Kit McDaniel. And I think when we last left you, I was asking you, just as to know what happens to these kids at 13 years old, 14, 15, if they have committed a felony or, God forbid, a murder.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're clear. Any child that commits a crime after 13 years old that would carry life in prison is under the original jurisdiction of the circuit court. So they are an adult. So before they go to trial, if they are to be held, they're to be held in the county jail. They can be held in an adult jail. We still, under federal rule, we want to keep them sight and sound separated from other adults for obvious reasons, but they are adults. And if they go to trial and are convicted and sentenced, they would go to the Youthful Offender Unit at CMCF, at Central Mississippi Correctional Facility, and that's where they would remain until they are 18, and then they would be transferred to the adult system.
You have an idea how many kids are there?
I don't, not right offhand, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't.
But Judge, how does that work in with what we've heard that the Supreme Court says if you can't be in for life if you're at that particular age?
Well, a lot of things the Supreme Court says, we take them, chew on them, and try to make them work. But there's that everything that happens in our justice system, Paul, is the result of a broad brush. They leave the individual cases for us to try to figure out what to do with them, and they make these sweeping decisions that you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm telling you what, a 13-year-old with a gun, like the one who killed her mama in our county a few weeks ago, is just as dangerous as an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old. That victim is just as dead. And so that's one of the problems we have, is trying to figure out how to make all this work in each individual case. That's one reason I asked Corey to join me today, because he's a guy that surveys the case and makes that decision to start with as to which court we're going to be in. I want to say one other thing, too, because they're not going to fire me anyway, but the Board of Supervisors of our county has been, ever since 90, when I first got in this business, has been incredibly responsive from a financial standpoint for the needs of the children of our county. And I think that's one of the primary reasons we're not way behind where some other counties, without naming names, are. Yeah. For example, we have 6 certified teachers in our detention center, so that when a kid gets locked up, they keep up their education every minute they're in that detention center, depending on which grade level they are. We've got so many programs that our supervisors have stepped up to the plate and said, we need to spend some money or this problem is going to get worse. And my theme here, Paul, is that one of the reasons it hasn't gotten worse in our county is because of their commitment to our young folks.
We often talk about mental illness as far as older people and adults, but we have this perfect example in the news this week. Young lady allegedly tried to stab her mom to death when she was sleeping. Corey, do you see that we have mental illness is also a problem at that age?
We do, Paul. And one of the issues that we have is in Mississippi, we have one place that the judge can order a child into and commit the child into, and that's the state hospital. Outside of that, it's based on eligibility criteria that primarily is set by insurance as well as affordability. And a lot of our mental illness, especially in our children, goes untreated because of those reasons.
The waiting, let me ask, the waiting list to get into the juvenile facility at our state hospital, and I'm not casting the blame anywhere, but it's months long. And these are people who desperately need a recentering of their lives, and we nothing we can do for them until that waiting time's over.
I have this mental block here for some reason. It just seems like 20 or 30 years ago we did a better job on this. We had more facilities or something. That we just dropped the ball as far as mental health in the state. And nobody, and we have legislature after legislature, nobody can, it's almost like the lanyap. We'll talk about that later. And yeah, we are concerned about it, but we'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Paul, one of the issues, especially what we see, is it's the idea that these children, especially the young children, can be in the community. There's a stigma issue, and certainly we want to make sure that children that can be treated in the community are treated in the community, but some of these children need more intensive care. The problem is a lot of our facilities are being filled up by parents that just don't want to be parents.
I know. And one of the things we talked about earlier, this is a cultural change that's going to take a long time. You guys have got your hands full. I'll say that. Thank you for coming in. Don't be a stranger. I'd love to have this conversation again.